What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Thanks for checking in to our latest Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, kicking things off on the right foot. Got a lot going on as Anthony and I are heading on a plane after the show to head to the nation's capital to find out what is going on in Washington. Hopefully, we run into a few people. We get the word there's not a lot going on in Washington right now, but they're all in basically the office tomorrow. So hopefully they'll have a little bit of time for the two of us as we want to talk all things cannabis related. Speaking of cannabis, some interesting news here today. Multi-state operator Curaleaf announced that they're opening up their first hemp dispensary. Want to know what the long-term strategy is there? They're opening it up in Palm Beach, Florida as well. We're going to talk about some tax reform stuff going on in Ohio. Latest news out of Pennsylvania. And the big news, as we saw again last week, Texas, is we're going to bring in Michael Bronstein to talk more in depth on what we can look at. And is this the step towards building a proper medical marijuana market? Because if so, this could be one of the, if not the biggest medical marijuana markets in the country. You know that Texas has 30 million people. So with that, let's welcome in AV here on a Monday afternoon. Good to see you, sir. And how's the weekend?
Oh, it was good. It was good. Baby decided to sleep completely normal and through the night on Saturday, and then last night decided that she didn't want to go to sleep. So it was a complete polar opposites.
Yeah. I was in first place in my March Madness pool at 1,400 people, and 3 hours later, I was in 38th. So things
sounds about right. I'm assuming you had St. John's going deep.
I played some upsets. I picked Colorado State to beat Maryland yesterday, and I thought I was going to look pretty sharp on that one. And I also picked Oregon to beat Arizona, and I was one of very few. So that gets you to drop from first to 38th. Gord, good to see you. Shad and Anthony kicking ass and taking numbers in DC. Yes, I hope that's the case. But we actually reached out to Nancy Mason, her team. She's busy all day tomorrow, so we won't be able to run into her. But we've got some notable names, and hopefully we just walk through the buildings. We're not going to be filming anything. So just for a heads up, and as far as scheduling this week, everyone, we got evergreen content coming out tomorrow. I'm going to outline some of the stuff that's going on in Texas. No live stream on Wednesday, but we're going to do a live stream on Thursday when we're back. And we'll have some of the feedback and some of the conversations that we've had. You okay with that?
It's news to me. Yeah.
News to you.
That's good.
Yes. So we'll do, like I usually do, just some industry trend stuff on Tuesday and Wednesday this week, live stream Thursday, and then ready, drum roll, Friday, 11 a.m. Guess who's hopping on? Zach George, CEO of SNDL, and he's ready to talk about anything and everything. So that should be a great podcast. Always love having a conversation. He's one of the most smartest, sophisticated CEOs in the space, and should be a good interview, don't you think?
Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be nice to talk to him about his annual letter. I know that he didn't pull any punches when talking about MSOs paying their taxes, EBITDA metrics, obviously the high tide filing of the ownership in the company. And then I'd love to talk to him about overall strategy. I mean, I think he's still tied up in litigation as it relates to Parallel. He's still tied up in litigation as it relates to Skymint. So he's got some U.S. assets waiting in the wings, and really curious to hear his thoughts on the future of the U.S. market.
Phil, we will ask that question, but what's great about building a community is you can ask that question too. So log on at 11 a.m. and outline some of these questions, and make sure after this, if there's any investor forums that you guys are part of, let them know, especially the SNDL investor group, that we will be having Zach on Friday. And if there's any specific questions, then make sure to log on, provide those questions during our live stream or anything prior. Happy to ask anything and everything that you guys want. So with that, keep that in your calendars as we get things going. But real quick, we're going to have Michael Bronstein from Attach going to come on in just a moment to talk about some stuff in Texas and Ohio. But before I get into that, interesting tweet that was pushed out earlier today by investigative reporter Jason Garcia, who posted that records show that Governor Ron DeSantis took a $500,000 check from Philip Morris International in the closing weeks of last year's campaign. That was against Amendment 3. Oh, how the plot thickens. But at first, it's a little confusing. You've got this company that's invested in medical companies, but at the same time is writing a $500,000 check. What do you make of this?
I mean, reading farther down the thread, I'm not sure it was so much about cannabis. It was more so about, hey, Ron, or hey, PMI would really appreciate the capital allocation towards the committee against A3 in Florida. They were looking for tax breaks and leniency around their IQOS product. In the state of Florida, I think they're privy to the lowest tax rate, and they're able to sell their product at the lowest price in the state of Florida, and they added $500,000 to this till against A3 in Florida. I mean, this is just DeSantis again. I'm a big fan of DeSantis for a lot of things that he's done in Florida. He's been great anytime we've had an emergency in the state. He's been great at balancing the budget. He then goes off the rails on certain topics that he just doesn't like, even though the people of the state of Florida have other views relating to the topics, and a majority are for certain things within the state. I mean, I can't wait for the gubernatorial. If Byron Donalds is running against Casey DeSantis, I will start fundraising for Byron Donalds and do anything to make sure that Casey DeSantis does not get into that office. Ron's just inauthentic, and I mean, he's really lost a lot of favor with a lot of Floridians over several of these topics, and it's just you just hate to see it.
Well, there's rags to riches type stories, but there's riches to rags. And the more and more I see what DeSantis is doing, it's like a lot of people are starting to scratch their head on some of his decision making. But if that's a politician, but let's face it, the money that he received leading up to this campaign, it's just
that was a lot. He also let's also not forget that I think he's still under investigation for using Florida taxpayer funds to combat Amendment 3, a people's initiative that was put at the ballot box on Election Day. So, I mean, there were some very unsavory things that Governor DeSantis did in combating Amendment 3. Obviously, you could see that he had a lot of vitriol and fervor against the amendment, and we're still kind of up in the air as how adult use cannabis is going to take shape in the state of Florida. I think it's going to be heavily predicated on who takes that governor's seat coming 2026.
Well, I think if you look at the seat of Philip Morris and how they view the cannabis industry, the way I take it is look, they've invested in a number of medical marijuana companies globally. I think they're all for medical, but the way the perception leaves behind is that they're not ready to jump in on any recreational play right now. But I think, right now they believe in medical, but they are definitely walking with caution. And when you see something like this, it makes you question how much they believe in the industry from a recreational standpoint. When you see something like this behind the scenes, makes you wonder or realize that, they're in no hurry to jump into this space right now.
Yeah. And I mean, let's also not forget that any big alcohol companies and any big tobacco companies, they really can't come into the space in the United States due to that Schedule I classification of cannabis. If we do get rescheduling and we do get ultimately descheduling, they're going to come in and join the party. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But due to the regulatory framework, their current licenses, and just the overall risk, they can't jump into the U.S. business right now without any recourse on their overarching business that is orders of magnitude larger than any opportunity that they could have in the cannabis space.
Yeah. Phil writes, a little worried about the movement inside Trulieve right now. I know Kim went to see Donalds after 3 failed. Yes. Byron Donalds is growing up in a hurry. We met him last year.
He's talking about Trump.
He
went to go meet with Kim, had to sit down with Donald Trump after Amendment 3 failed.
Yeah. But there's some questions I think are valid questions about some of the changes that have gone on with Trulieve right now. But, I think after earnings season, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. It's still a big medical market, and it still looks like a 2-headed horse race right now, and that's between Trulieve and GTI. But
I think it's a valid point, but I also think it's a little bit of bad luck. I mean, they had one CFO that went rogue with the corporate card. From a corporate responsibility standpoint, you have to kind of show that gentleman the door. From my understanding, Getman had a better opportunity. He was getting paid more and maybe going into another industry. So, I mean, I can't really fault him there. So it is what it is.
Yep. Let's now dive into our next topic. And Curaleaf just announced the opening of a hemp dispensary located in Palm Beach. What'd you think of this? And what do you think their long-term strategy is here?
I think it's going to be an extension of the hempcompany.com that Boris has launched with the Select products. I think he's going to curate other naturally derived Delta-9 products. I don't see THCA flower finding its way inside the dispensary. I can't hate on it. I mean, I think it's smart. I mean, if Boris can create another brick and mortar store in Palm Beach that has Select branded products that ultimately leads somebody potentially into the dispensary from Curaleaf, the barrier to entry is very low for that consumer. The exposure is great. Good for him. It's going to be an experiment. Do I think that he's going to deploy 70 Curaleaf hemp dispensaries in the state of Florida? No. Do I think that he might deploy more? Sure,
Yeah.
I'd put them in Broward, I'd put them in Dade, I'd put them in Palm Beach, Orlando, Jacksonville. As long as he's able to open up these stores, incrementally increase his revenue, and sell product to consumers. On the hemp side, like I said, he's going to probably stay in edibles and beverages and stay the hell away from the THCA flower. There's no reason not to do this. I'm happy to see him do this.
So is this a script out of the Kevin Durant playbook where if you can't beat him, join him as far as the hemp industry?
We're getting to that point. Keep in mind though that there is hemp regulations going through the Florida legislature right now.
Yeah.
That while I don't want to call them onerous, they're pretty onerous. They will put caps on THC. They'll limit it, I think, to beverages and gummies. THCA flower will get stripped away, and they'll clamp down on hemp in the United States, or not in the United States, in Florida.
Yeah. Well, you got to pivot. And I think a lot of companies are pivoting right now, but you got to applaud, obviously, Boris for not sitting still. He's trying to look at different solutions, but you have to.
To be honest, with Boris's connections, what I really, really hope happens is he opens this. And Boris, if you're watching this, please do this. Open the store in West Palm Beach.
Yep.
And what he needs to do is get politicians or get people, thought leaders, to come down, take them to the hemp store, have them fundamentally understand what's going on, what the regulations are, and then take them to a Curaleaf. Explain to them exactly what's going on, show them the experience, and show them the parallels between the two and the differences between the two.
Yeah.
And maybe people will really start to get it. But I would be using that store as an experiential outlet to be educating people on really what these two markets look like that are currently fully, or one of them is fully legal in the United States.
I want to get some feedback from our viewers here, but who all thinks that Anthony should head this whole lobbying efforts on behalf of the industry? Because I think that you would be very well versed in both sides of it and would shed a lot of light on what's going on. I don't know what's going on in Washington right now, who's at play and who's having conversations, but my God, man, you would be incredible at representing the industry and explaining what's going on both sides that really have a true understanding. However, I'm sure there's a lot more to the story behind the scenes that we don't really want to know and get involved with. But that's I hope that says something and means something to you, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's wrap up this segment. Let's go into Insider's Edge. Let's go, Arns. All right, Monday afternoon, which welcomes in our best friend of the podcast. Let's welcome in the president of the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp, Mr. Michael Bronstein. Happy Monday. How's it going?
Happy Monday. It's good to see you guys.
You look very smart and intelligent right now. Attorney Michael Bronstein, join us.
No, I was gonna have to be here, and no, I'm not an attorney.
Looks like with all those books. How was the week, my friend? A lot of stuff that went on, especially in Texas, but I think that probably grabbed your attention. But what do you make of some of the stuff that was announced last week in that press conference? It's nice to see. It's about time, but it kind of blew my mind away with, was it 8,000 different dispensary locations that have opened up in an 18-month span? That's wild. Absolutely wild.
Shows demand, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Well, what I'm most curious about is I heard 3 billion, and now after the hearing, they're saying 8 billion. That's a pretty big delta between overall market numbers. But I mean, the market in Texas has to be enormous to be facilitating all these businesses.
You see, you're used to doing math. The people who put together these numbers aren't generally.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So the number, I mean, there've been wild swings on sort of what the marketplace is and what the numbers are. And we've seen a couple of different reports that have been published on this. The point is the market is large, right? And
very. I just didn't realize how large it was. Like that's saying something, but
everything's bigger in Texas, right?
Yeah.
This is a Texas style market.
Yeah.
And you go to Texas and it is everywhere, right? It is everywhere. And it's really caught the attention of the legislature. Certainly Lieutenant Governor has had a lot to say, about this. And this session has really turned to this issue. So we're seeing a lot of discussion in Texas, and Well, what we saw on the Senate side was a full, we saw a vote basically on what essentially is a full ban, or certainly a very large one. And then what remains to be seen is sort of where the other parts of the legislature are going to be here on this. But it doesn't seem like, coming into it, you would sort of think like, all right, maybe there's some room for negotiation. It seems like there's less room for negotiation with the discussion that's going on. I mean,
judging by that press conference, I didn't see a whole heck of a lot of negotiation going on there. They looked upset and mad, and rightfully so. But are they going too far? When we kind of put emotions aside, is this the right move and strategy?
Well, here's the problem. The problem is that people in Texas want legal cannabis.
Yep.
And they want access to legal cannabis, right? And the market is voting, and people's attitudes are well beyond where that of the legislature is on this, okay? And you've heard me say this a number of times, but it's just like painfully obvious. People want cannabis legal.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're going to these products, they're going to these stores, and they're getting, a lot of times they're getting a synthetic product, or they're getting, THCA flower, right? But they're getting a product that is not necessarily tested. It's certainly unregulated. There are a lot of problems. And I think that people who are reasonable in industry are also saying that as well. And like, what they're doing is they're turning around and they're like, well, the legislature's like, well, marijuana basically is legal in Texas.
Yep.
With a free for all. That's what's going on, right? So they have a choice. Okay, they have a choice to regulate. Okay, they have a choice to ban, is what they is some of the stuff that they've talked about here, right? And the reality is that people want access to products. And the closer that you get, really, you got to hew to the natural THC line. That's really what you've got to be doing.
That's it.
Is it? It's pretty easy.
That's it.
It's pretty easy.
That's literally all we need. Let's cut the line at naturally derived THC and just move on.
That's
that's the frustrating part, because I really do think that people can agree on in the majority.
And there isn't, Texas, it has a very limited medical program.
Yep.
I am hearing, though, that Rick Perry is lobbying to expand the medical program concurrently with clamping down on hemp, which wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't. Okay, so it wouldn't surprise me. There is an outcome that could be. There are a number of outcomes that are on the table. That's certainly an outcome that is on the table. In terms of access and access points, but the regulation in that market has probably been some of the most onerous regulation that we've seen.
Oh, it is.
Entire United States on medical cannabis, and for years we've discussed an expansion of the program and reasonableness around it. Texas, what we have here is a classic situation of things that have been taken too far, and the industry, like, where we win is when we stay in front of these things and we put a reasonable solution.
But here, Michael, my question then is like, we all know what's going on in Texas. Does this have any influence, do you think, on other states? And I don't want you to think like, but like, are you seeing this in other states that are taking notice as to what's happened in Texas? And are they becoming more aware of like, what is going on behind, the scenes that we're not even aware of?
It's Texas and it's other states, and people are trying to figure out what to do, right? Because here's the thing: the Farm Bill really has only given two options, because it's not a regulatory bill,
right?
Okay, so there's two options. It's either there's a loophole or there isn't a loophole.
Correct.
Right? There really isn't much in between. It's either that's because in order to do something else, you have to have a different bill, right? You have to have another vehicle. So at the state level, after the Farm Bill was passed, you have states being able to decide what it is that they want to do. And look,
Yeah.
it is foundational that a state be allowed to choose what it wants to do
Yep.
with cannabis regulation. But that's how we got legal.
Correct.
Okay, we got legal because states were permitted to do this. States took it into their own hands, and I think from a state's approach, that's been really how we've gotten most of our sensible policy in this country.
Yeah.
Everyone is watching what these other states are doing. Okay, and listen, I'll tell you something. When you look at states, what we're seeing is everybody said, okay, well, we don't know where folks were at the federal level on this. Okay. States feel like that folks have gone too far.
They have.
Okay. And in these states, every single bill that's come out or has had some momentum, I think this year has really been more restrictive than less restrictive, right?
Okay.
I think generally we're headed to a more restricted environment, not a less restricted environment.
Now, do you think that can trickle down on the state regulated cannabis businesses and industry?
Yeah, I mean, the worry is that we're all painted with the same brush.
Of course.
Okay? In an ideal world, what in the cannabis industry, what we'd be doing is we'd be moving to be able to get to better regulation. Okay, that is much more sensible than what we have in place in some of these markets. All right. It's short of what we're seeing, no regulation. And I think the problem that, the quote unquote hemp industry, but largely sort of the synthetic derivative industry, which we've made a distinction here, or at least I've made a certain distinction on this show around, because I do think that these are two very different things from having worked at this, for the last decade, right? From having worked at this the last decade. The problem is we're all getting tainted by our worst actors. Okay. Like that's just the way it is. Nobody cares. All right. Nobody cares. When we come in and we argue for legal marijuana, all right, and we're like, hey, this should be legal and this is reasonable. The problem is that people look at us by our worst actors and they see what's going on that side of the industry. And if we don't say something, then it's not credible. It's not credible policymaking. We have people that are out there that are like, the argument goes like this, and you've all heard this. All right. We are regulated. The Farm Bill regulated us.
Yes.
Right. The Farm Bill is the regulation.
There's no caps on how much THCA flower. There are no caps on how much THCA flower you can have in your possession.
Let me ask you this, right? If the Farm Bill had been the regulation, right? Well, so you're telling me that, one, the argument goes is that Congress completely intended this. You read it, the plain language reading of the bill is they absolutely intended to do this, right? So let me ask you this. Why didn't they put age restrictions?
Right.
Right. So you're telling me that the U.S. Congress knew that they were legalizing hemp, right, as an intoxicating product, and they were super cool with the idea that there wasn't going to be age restrictions.
That's wild.
Right.
That is wild.
Because okay, and then it's like, well, no, it would have had to have been in a subsequent thing. It would have had to have been in regulations. It would have had to have been whatever. And it's like, well, by the time you get down to that level of argument, you are so far down the rabbit hole that it's.
What does that mean, Michael? Because common sense says you would never do something like that. Why is that done? I think people want to understand, from a political aspect, the people you speak to, and you look at the broader picture. Why was something like this passed without intoxicating, as you said, a legal age restriction? That's mind-blowing.
Well, if people knew that at the time, I mean, if you go back and you look at the congressional record and you saw what was said at the time, nobody thought that with the 0.3% THC thresholding, that it would be very hard to produce an intoxicating product. And what happened was people looked at the derivatives language and they realized that they could make intoxicating products using derivatives, right? And that's the issue, right? That's the big issue. So it's like, oh, well, wait a second. So you're telling me now we can produce synthetic. So the other thing that basically you're arguing is that we can produce synthetic drugs, basically synthetic forms of marijuana lawfully under the Farm Bill.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like the problem is like there is this intellectual argument that is being made on the other side of the issue around synthetics, and it's kind of fallen apart because it's not passing the smell test, right? If we were talking about regulation, we were talking about, and you can make intoxicating products out of natural product, right? We all want to be able to make intoxicating products out of natural product legally and federally.
Legally.
Correct.
So let's do it.
It's that's the thing too. And if you look at the Texas market, I don't know how you could break it down into, let's say, flower versus edibles versus other form factors. But from what I've seen and what I've heard, none of that flower, or very little of that flower, is actually grown in Texas. It's all coming from California, Oregon, and Washington, and the West Coast, and it's finding its way into the Texas market. So if you took that $3 billion market, let's call it right now, flipped it into an adult use market, the CapEx that you would have to spend to develop a regulated market would take forever, and those consumers would then, in turn, probably go back to the illicit market. So you would just be compounding the effects of the illicit market in Texas while the legal market is building in parallel, and you'd probably get nowhere net. You would just beef up your illegal market.
Yeah, but like, here's the thing that I don't understand, right? And it's like, at first I was like, all right, well, you have to you're arguing for sensible regulation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? Look at what's going on in Florida. So you talk about Florida.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a bill in Florida, and it, like, last session also, you basically had 5 milligrams, 50 per package, right, of THC, and it could be natural. And people were saying that's like ultra restrictive. And it's like, wait a second, you're making
That's
that
common
lawful.
sense.
Yeah, you're making that like lawful, and you're stripping away the synthetics. Okay. Yeah. And the thing is like the problem that we have is there are people in advocacy who are good actors. Okay. But they've also put themselves on the side of bad actors when they start talking about certain products, and then everybody gets painted with the same brush.
Of course they do.
And there's an argument.
You imagine
like,
people that don't.
Let's all come in together.
Well,
all right.
So you talk. I don't want to blanket all the advocates, because there are some that don't take this position. But if you talk to a lot of advocates right now, what they're saying is, oh, if you're anti-hemp, then you're anti-access of the plant to patients. And that's their argument. And they want hemp to proliferate. And they want any form of cannabis to proliferate, regardless of the quagmire that it's building or the ramifications and repercussions it has on public safety. If you're against hemp from an advocacy standpoint, most people will tell you, well, okay, then you're against cannabis. You're a prohibitionist. I've got people on Twitter that all day right now are calling me, Brady Cobb, a ton of other people. If you talk out against hemp, you are now a prohibitionist, which is complete bullshit. And it's just the guys that they're sitting under to just have hemp proliferate.
They're also saying that, like, what it is it's a small business. It's not a small business.
No, it's
right.
No,
it's huge. Right. And so it's like, they're like, okay, like, we all look at sort of the regulated market. It's the regulated market that's small.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And everybody's running around saying, well,
Good point, Michael.
Like what it is. Right. So like, really what they're doing is they're building, people are advocating that they're building sort of a straw man to push over. Right. In a lot of these legislative discussions.
We could sit here and cry over spilt milk and all this sort of stuff. I see people commenting in here like, I wish they were this, specific about poisonous foods in the grocery stores and buying $1,000 worth of booze that could kill me. The victim game is not going to get anywhere. The train station has left.
No.
So what do people need to pay attention to on what is going to happen next in Texas? Is this in some ways a step towards the right process of getting a proper medical framework in place there?
I mean, we don't know. I mean, the outcome is not knowable. It's either there either be some level, there could be a compromise, right? Or you saw the press conference, there could not be a compromise on that, right? And what does that look like? I mean, we are now seeing this play out in state legislatures across the country. Okay. And as a number of issues come up, right? we talk about beverage, right? Is there a beverage carve out? Do you put it into an alcohol model? All right. Is it and there are challenges, by the way, too. All right. In some of these states, because of the way beverage regulation has rolled out too. It's really complicated, right? On the other side, it's like, okay, do you create a larger medical market, maybe with less restrictions? Okay. Do you create a natural THC market with maybe a lower restriction level in the legislature? That the issue that we have is, I think in Texas, is you do have a level of prohibitionism running through Texas. That's happening. The idea that when you talk about marijuana regulation, right? Yep. If you're talking about regulation and you're talking about access, that's not prohibition. It creates the ability for people to be able to get the product. All right. And so the problem that we have in Texas currently is that we have the proliferation of all of these products everywhere. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people who are some people are trying to do the right thing. And then there are other people, I think, who are trying to spew confusion into this. And we have the message. I think the message has been very clear from those who are opposed to this. They're saying like the public health and safety issue is paramount, but the problem is they're not getting it right when they're talking about the public health and safety issue, right? Correct. They're talking about THC like it's this huge public health and safety issue. It's not.
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to say that's what they need to do in Texas is acknowledge that the state of Texas has a multi-billion-dollar legal cannabis industry operating within it right now. The state of Texas has not descended into madness or had some giant public health crisis come online in the last couple of years, and just legalize it on an adult use level and bring in all of these operators that are good, clean businesses and just legalize it. Because other than that, I think you're going to take two steps back if you clamp down and let the black market start to take over again. And then you're going to be playing catch up the entire time, and it's going to create no progress.
They have to be okay with legalization. I mean, that's the thing. They're not. So the idea was sort of like, okay, from an advocacy perspective, well, all right, the market pushes out, right? And then all of a sudden everyone realizes it's already here and everything's okay, right? The problem this time was everyone turned around and they're like, oh my gosh, it's already here and we're not okay.
Yeah,
correct.
Right.
Or what they do what they've done with decriminalization. I mean, granted, this isn't probably a very popular opinion, but take it down to the municipal level. Have the municipalities vote. Do you want adult use cannabis within this jurisdiction? Because we've already voted in several of the major cities in Texas to decriminalize and just let it roll out there. But start to make progress on putting a handle on this thing because it's completely out of control.
Yes.
The issue is like, so what do? Do you argue? Like, I'm like, here, what we have to do is legalize marijuana in Texas.
Correct.
Right. I mean, all right, they're calling it hemp. You know what I mean? You've got to legalize natural THC, okay, and then have restrictions and regulation around a lot of the other things that are going on. If there's a direction that moves towards that, you want to expand the medical program, go for it, right? Yeah. Like you want to do these are all sensible.
Getting some great comments here.
Sensible reform here.
John Roy writes public health and safety.
Most importantly.
John Roy writes public health and safety. Have you heard of legal opioids? Makes a good point. Very good point.
It's just another conversation.
It's just another chapter in how things have become so complicated. And it's just, this shouldn't be happening. But I think the question is like, what happens next? Does Texas, you think, legalize medical marijuana at some point here?
Well, it's the question is, do they have it less restrictive? It's legal in Texas. The question is it less restrictive? Is the medical market open up to be less restrictive? I also think that pitting the medical market versus, whatever is going on in this synthetic THC market is somewhat of a false choice in Texas. And it's one that plays into the politics of the discussion of Texas. And really what we're talking about here is like, we shouldn't really be talking about there are obviously politics of it. Yeah. But let's talk about how to actually move this forward, protect people's consumer health, right?
Yeah.
Let's protect people, but also give access to products.
Because also, if you notice, in that press conference, the lieutenant governor and everybody else that was on that stage, all they kept saying were synthetics. They never said cannabis. They never said cannabinoids. They didn't even say hemp. They just kept saying synthetics. Synthetics.
Look, as attached, we've talked about synthetics for a long time. I think that we're winning the argument on synthetics.
It's good.
Because the more that you look into it, that like they're saying synthetic. Look, I don't like what they're saying about THC.
Correct.
Right? I don't like that. But the idea that they're talking about synthetics, the way they are, and we all know that there are a lot of things that are made synthetically. The problem is the process and the things that are being used and how far the market, has taken this. And when you're talking about those types of products, you are talking much more about, an FDA pharmaceutical level standard than is in place right now with federal, with a federal prohibition that's in place. And I think it's a misnomer. The idea, there are a lot of products that are on the market right now, I don't think are lawful under a plain
well,
to
your point,
no, especially when you get into like HHC, THCP, Delta Zero, all that crap is not lawful whatsoever.
Yeah, the OPP drugs we were talking about.
Correct.
Earlier.
And those are the worst ones.
Naughty by nature. Here we go again. 2 weeks in a row.
There'll be a third week.
Yeah. Well, perception's reality. And for those that don't follow this space, I can see the concern when you bring up THC. It's a broad blanket, and people that don't understand the space are just thinking that, is this really going on in the cannabis industry right now, which is so far from the truth. But I'm curious to see, obviously, what will happen to Texas. 30 million people, that's a hell of a market. And if they can get that done the right way, that's a big win for the overall space moving forward, but a long ways to go. But it's good to have these conversations and awareness. But before I let you go, I also wanted to bring up some interesting stuff. What do you make of Ohio? What's going on with some of the changes going on there right now with regards to increasing their excise taxes and restructuring some of the revenue allocations? Anything you want to shed on that when it comes to that? Because there was some news that broke out this morning that pertained to it.
Yeah, with Ohio, one of the problems that we have right now is we have a legislature that is trying to roll back some of the, some of the parts that, that had already been previously approved in programs. Right. And we're seeing this is something that we've started to see in programs in what I would call a little bit, redder states in this at the state level. And this is something that I think we're seeing crop up in a number of different states, but Ohio happens to be one that we're seeing this in right now. If you have legal cannabis, you can't put the level of restriction around it. You have to, taxation policy also is regulatory policy.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. It just is, because we all know that the economics of cannabis are the things that kind of rule the day in the marketplace and also consumer behavior. You're not going to be able to get people into a safe and regulated market if the product is sitting there having to compete with an illicit market. So you start dialing those numbers, right? And you're going to have you're going to have an issue if taxes are too high. What you want to do, and this is the whole problem, with how cannabis businesses are taxed right now, at least the ones that are state legal in this and are operating with state licenses. We have a tax system that is totally screwing that up. And I would just say also too, in Ohio, they're having a hemp discussion in Ohio too, because why wouldn't they have a hemp discussion?
Well, this is good.
This is what this is what's going on kind of at the same time in all of these different states. I think that in order to really move this forward, we are going to have to talk about what comprehensive regulation looks like. What's common sense policy? We have a lot of people who are all of these bits and pieces of policy. The problem is it's like a pointillism. Like you can't step back and see everything at once, right? And all of these things impact each other.
But the
Right.
encouraging thing, to your point from a couple of weeks ago, as you said, there's a number of hemp bill discussions taking place in numerous states. So we're seeing that trend more and more, correct?
Yeah. Here's the thing, though, because of the uncertainty with the farm bill.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a thesis. There's sort of a
Point.
thesis until we actually get to a place of regulatory stability. The level of investment that comes into the industry is going to be much more high risk,
Of course.
right? And the types of investment that we see in the industry is going to be is going to be more risk capital. And I think a lot of folks over the last several years, we've noticed that there's been less capital coming into the industry at large in general, because I think what people can't, until we are able to create a way where folks, businesses can be bought and sold legitimately, right?
Correct.
There's a pathway here for diligence that goes on in these businesses. It's going to be harder to get to a capital market situation that would be advantageous for the industry.
I know this is on the federal level, but if we're having this conversation a year from now, what do you think? Are we going to get rescheduling the cannabis? I know this is something that you don't focus on day to day, but do you think in a year from
I
now,
focus it on every day? I day to day focused on rescheduling. I mean, I think that we are.
is the farm bill amended as well?
I do think there is, in my view, it's very hard to see a farm bill pass, whenever a farm bill passes, without addressing the hemp issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
We saw two versions of it. All right. You want the inside and you want the scoop on the insider's edge. I'm telling you this, reading the tea leaves on the farm bill isn't going to stay the way that it is with hemp. Okay. Something will happen with it. It's not going to stay the way that it is. So I think if we came back a year from now and there is a farm bill that passes a year from now, which, we would hope that a farm bill would pass over it, we do think that there would be some activity around that issue. On the scheduling issue, look, I remain cautiously optimistic on the scheduling issue. The Trump administration hasn't weighed in yet, I think, formally on that. And I think there's a lot of work that is going on around that issue in a very coordinated way.
Well, I can see people's frustration because they're like looking at share prices right now. Everything's, go ahead, Anthony.
People are frustrated. Trump's been in office for 60 days.
I was just going to say that the first 100 days,
everybody. Yeah.
The first 100 days, as we always said, this is a non-starter. So just, I get it, people. You're frustrated.
It's literally 60 days he's been in office.
Yeah.
Like, they got a lot of other shit to worry about.
Look, I think all of the agenda items that they did, irrespective of what people think politically one way or another, there is no disputing the quickness of which the administration has moved to its priority positions, right? A lot of times more traditionally, like look at how long it took Biden to get around to the things that he was prioritizing.
But on the flip side to our viewers, I get why they're frustrated. And I get why they're nervous about, because history has shown that. And we have yet to see something concrete that shows otherwise. But
I'm telling you, you
got it cut off there.
The worst part is he was about to deliver the goods.
That was the soundbite, buddy.
It was the soundbite. He had the answer.
All right.
He knew what was going to happen. I'll tell you something. Here's the thing. Okay. Even though Anthony had the answer, he was coming to it.
What a great answer that was, wasn't it?
It was a hell of an answer. We're going to have to, unbelievable. The guy, he literally solved the problem.
In case you missed it, we'll see you next Monday. Everyone.
That's right. We'll see you. It's unbelievable that he just solved the problem. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated too. And I'm not like looking at this in like some Pollyannish way.
I hear you.
I just think that it's gotten to a point. It's gotten to a head.
Okay. We got to hear that soundbite comment. Finish your thought. Oh no. We lose him again.
You guys are. No, I should be here now. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
It's the it's not the uncertainty around rescheduling. The problem is the uncertainty in the people are watching that every single day, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yes,
That's the
I
problem.
hear you. Yeah,
It's a lagging. I think the market though is a lagging indicator of regulation. Okay, because we're seeing,
Yeah.
even though the market's getting bigger, we're seeing what these states are doing, right? Everyone's like, oh, they can't stop. It's not going to do this, right? Nothing is set in stone. All right. The regulated market isn't set in stone. None of it's set in stone. And that's the thing that we see here. When we come back here 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're probably going to be, talking about like really narrow issues around some of these things. We're still basically in the formulation of this, of this market. And there's just too much from like hemp. There was Politico even this morning was basically like, look at all the rollback that we're seeing,
yes.
on hemp.
Todd Harrison's newsletter today was the U.S. Cannabis Civil War. A bipartisan group of 20 state attorney generals are imploring Congress to take action on addressing the public health crisis due to the multi-billion-dollar intoxicating hemp market. Maybe I missed this headline, but I didn't realize that there were 20 state attorney generals coalescing around issue. If they are, fantastic.
The AG sent a letter about the farm bill. Like they even sent a letter around the farm bill. And we've also seen enforcement actions happen in the states. Yeah, as even today, I was reading about an enforcement action that was going on in states where an AG had come in and look at it. And when you talk to the AGs, they take this issue very seriously. There's a consumer, consumer protection.
This is good. This is momentum. All right, my friend, this has been good as usual. We're off to Washington tomorrow morning, Anthony and I. So are you in Washington this week at all?
I'm in Pennsylvania right now, so I probably won't be in Washington until next week, probably.
All right. Well, always good to see you, and always appreciate the insider's edge information, but helpful information to say the least. Have yourself a great week, and we'll see you back here Monday.
Everybody enjoy. It was good to see you.
All right. Thanks, Michael. All right. We're working on that. What do we determine? You need a new router or modem?
I have no idea, man. I've got 1,000 I've got a gig Wi-Fi and my computer. I could run the fucking space station on. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong.
We're getting that fixed for you people, but I appreciate everyone's feedback, but we'll get that fixed. Before I let you go, I got this email from...
Maybe I have to get Starlink. Get with the times.
All right. Nuck MD actually reached out to me this afternoon, and there was a recent poll they did. How much trust do you have that the cannabis you purchase is free of pesticides, mold, and contaminants? 32% said high trust. Moderate trust is 41%. Low trust 18%. No trust was 9%. And I think we brought this up last week with that news regarding Aurora Cannabis and that, what's the term they call it? Is it the PM2? It's that new...
it's their varietal. It's their cultivar that is... they knocked out the gene, or they knocked out the gene that is susceptible to powdery mildew.
Which is 15%.
But it's more so... I think people are more so worried about pesticides and heavy metals due to just unscrupulous grow practices. But I mean, you go to Trulieve, you go to Sunburn, you go to Curaleaf, there's a full panel COA that accompanies all your flower. That you're buying. So if you want to be able to trust the source, go to a regulated dispensary.
Moises, you know what? You're right. I didn't mention MaryMed this earnings season. I got to bring that up. Good team over there. I know their wholesale numbers were way up again, which is encouraging on that front. But send me an email if you can. Subscribe to our Baked In newsletter and just reply to it with cheese, followed by maybe some stats and outline that. We can include that as far as our recap and analysis, but appreciate the heads up. Quick reminder, Anthony and I are off to Washington tomorrow morning, so no live stream on Wednesday, but back here Thursday at 4 o'clock. And then the big one on Friday at 11 a.m. with Zach George, CEO of SNDL. So mark it in your calendars. In the meantime, I got a flight to catch. I got to get to the airport. I fly out in the next 3 hours, so I've got to run.
Do you?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
I got to get to the airport. In the meantime, everybody, enjoy the rest of your week. Let us know if there's anything like you said, leave some comments below and let us know if there's any questions, any angles that you want us to cover off while we're in Washington, and we will do accordingly. But wish us luck, and be interesting to see this summit on Wednesday, seeing a lot of these European operators and members of the HHS will be at this summit as well on Wednesday. So we're just going to sit back and soak everything up like a sponge, and hopefully we get some positive feedback and direction on what this administration views cannabis and whether or not we're going to see any kind of action in the coming months, because that's the most important thing I think a lot of people want to know and learn. So that's the goal and objective when we get there. So wish us luck. Make sure to scan that QR code to stay connected, stay open-minded, and we'll see you later this week, Thursday at 4 o'clock for our Washington recap on what we learned and our latest trade to black. Anthony, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the nation's capital tomorrow. Hey, everybody. Stay connected here. The latest Trade to Black podcast. Another great episode under the belt. What'd y'all think? Do you like what we had to say? Please leave any comments below. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button, leave some comments, as I said before, and subscribe to our channel, because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.